From the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, this is the A Cuppa and a Yarn podcast.
Hello and welcome to A Cuppa and a Yarn. I'm Michelle Aleksandrovics-Lovegrove, and as Australia continues to wind its way through the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in this country, we're speaking with CEOs of local Aboriginal land councils to see how they're going, how their communities are going. So I'm speaking today with Mike Nolan, who's the CEO of Wellington Local Aboriginal Land Council. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, and hello to everybody.
First of all, for some people who may be listening, because this does go out on all major podcasting services, can you tell us just a little bit about your community and your LALC?
Wellington's in central west New South Wales, about 50 kilometres east of Dubbo, a small town, a population of around 9,000 people. So, the Aboriginal population here, according to ABS, is around 1,900, although we believe that it's definitely higher than that. So, yeah.
I know that we received notification of the LALC office closing as such, to assist with social distancing, etc. And you're working from home at the moment, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, we were put into self-isolation because we came in contact with, we were at a premises where somebody tested positive a few days before. So, we were in self-isolation for a couple of weeks, and now we're actually working from home, and the office remains closed until we see what's going on.
What happens with that? If you were in contact with someone who tested positive for the virus, were you tested, or what happens with that?
Well, luckily I didn't have direct contact with them, but I had contact with workers who did. So they closed the site down, sent the workers home. They notified us, but the workers themselves were tested. So we basically just stayed in isolation until their test came back, and as a result, the test came back negative. So we were given the green light.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really fantastic. And especially, I guess, with a community like Wellington, you're not, awfully far, but you're far enough from any sort of major centre if the virus does enter the community. So how is the situation going? How's community feeling right now?
Look, I think, there's a bit of uncertainty, but overall, things are just going along and people are feeling okay. As I said, we're about 50 kilometres from Dubbo, and a little bit further, the other closest major town is Orange. So there are cases in our region, over 20, I believe now, and 3 confirmed cases in Dubbo, but none in Wellington at this stage. So until we actually know somebody that's been affected, or we get somebody testing positive in Wellington, it's kind of a little bit surreal at the moment, and obviously we're all sitting back and watching the news, and it just seems like a different world out there.
It sure does. With Wellington Aboriginal community, what is the situation, for example, with bit of education, I guess, from about hand washing, about social distancing? Are you confident that everyone's pretty well across that?
Yeah, I think so, although I do still see some of the younger kids out on the streets, and whether that message is getting through to them. But certainly a lot of, as you know, it's all over the news, and it's on social media. We put it up on our site, the local medical service put it up. I think people know about it. But yeah, like I said, we've, as everybody else, we've just closed down the swimming pool. And Wellington, one of our social outings is to the local club and the pubs, and they've been shut now for a few days. I think people are starting to feel that. But yeah, look, I think people know what to do, but like I said, I think it's having a little bit of trouble filtering right down to the younger kids.
And I think that is an issue. I mean, I have a couple of teenagers here, and they're well aware of what's happening. But I do note that on a day-to-day basis, when things crop up, the other day one said to me, "Oh, a girlfriend wants to come and see me. Can she come in?" And I just said, "Love, I'm so sorry, she can't. She can't." She understood why. But so I guess your advice to parents in the community about making sure that kids know, but perhaps they'll need to be reminded on a case-by-case basis. Do you think that's the way I'm finding as a parent? That's the way I need to go.
Yeah, definitely. It's at the end of the day, it's still the responsibility of the parents to make sure that the kids are doing the right thing, and it is hard for everyone, but we just need to crack down on that a little bit more.
You're saying you are working with the local medical services or the local medical service. Does community sort of have the right sort of information about how to sort of stay quiet, stay safe right now, do you think?
Yeah, I believe so. It's as you said, we're a small community, and we work with other providers in the town as well, and try and get the word out. But I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. As far as the LALC goes, though, you're working from home. I mean, you did say to me the other day that there's not too far for you to go to the office anyway. But in terms of community reaching you, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, we're putting notice up on our front door, and we have asked people to contact us either via email or phone, and they have those numbers. But we've also gone the addition of extra and said, look, please, only do it that way and don't come knocking on our door, because everybody knows where we live in a small town, and people, I still think that they can do that. So.
Yeah, okay. Being in a small town, you're 50-odd kilometres from Dubbo, though, are you still sort of seeing that there might be, because, Australia's not in lockdown, but we may well be heading for that there's a lot of sort of transiting, from Dubbo, Wellington, other towns, back again, Orange. Is that still happening?
I think it's slowed down a little bit now. One of our issues, like everybody else, is getting basic things like sugar and flour and toilet paper. So I do know that people have been going across to Orange and Dubbo to get those resources. I up until now tried to drop into the supermarket a couple of times a day to get hold of those things, but we just can't seem to. I don't know if we're not getting them or they're just not staying on the shelves long enough.
How many do you just have? You have one little supermarket in town?
No, we've got a Coles and Woolies. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no, they're quite large supermarkets, but shelves are bare at both. So.
I agree. I have a Woolworths down the road from me, and it's not, to be honest, it's not a nice place to be at the moment. It's always crowded and it's always quite stressful going in there. But I've found that no matter what time of day I go in there, and hours are restricted now, there's never toilet paper. So same as you. I don't know whether they're not getting them or I'm just always appearing after the shelves have been cleaned out.
I actually rang head office in Woolies this morning to see if it was possible to do some sort of bulk purchasing from the land council so I could hand stuff out to community members. And they told me this morning they've just cancelled all bulk buying across the board. So anyway, that's the word I got from them this morning.
Wow. So even for an organisation such as yourself, there's no exceptions?
No exceptions at all.
Jeez.
And I tried the local stores to say, if I were to put, say, packages or hampers together, could we waiver the restrictions on, like long life milk and those sorts of things? And they said, no, you need to talk to head office. And I'm still getting a no to that.
You're listening to A Cuppa and a Yarn. I'm speaking with Mike Nolan, who's the CEO of Wellington Local Aboriginal Land Council, which is Wellington's a small community about 50 kilometres from Dubbo in New South Wales, about what's happening in community regarding COVID-19 there at the moment. Mike, given your distance from Dubbo or Orange or any other major centre, what are your options if anyone is diagnosed in community?
Look, that is a concern, and we're not quite sure how we're going to handle it. One of our biggest issues is if one person is tested positive, how do you isolate that person?
Yeah.
So we've been counting beds in the town as far as motels and hotels, and seeing what's available, and what other options there are. And certainly, given some of the houses or the homes are crowded, it's certainly going to be an issue. Look, I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see, and obviously, keep the conversation going with the medical service and also the hospital, and see how we actually handle that.
So, I apologise that I don't know this, and I should. Is there's not a hospital in Wellington, is there? Is there?
What, sorry?
A hospital.
Yes, we do have a hospital.
Okay, all right, that's good. But clearly, there'd be very limited options there, I guess, as far as
staffing levels are low, and I'm not quite sure how many beds they are. But one of our other issues is the Land Council manage the Nanima mission. So it's an old mission, probably about 8 kilometres outside of town.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got about 32 homes out there, and families living in an enclosed environment. And obviously that needs to be thought about a little bit differently to people living in town as well. I'm getting the feeling that there are some people wanting to come home as well at this time, and come into those communities. So how we manage that. I had a phone call this morning from our zone team asking, do we think it's the community would agree to isolating them in terms of a shutdown, I suppose, around that little village. I don't think we're quite there yet, and I think that most people that would want to go down that line are probably already self-isolating and doing what they can. But yeah, certainly, it's an issue. Even down to little things like we've previously identifying each of the homes. So if you rang up for an ambulance, for example, none of the homes were numbered. So we've been in touch with emergency services, and I've provided them with an actual map of the numbering system out there, because it's not an ordinary numbering system. And we've put numbers now on the gutters, and we're just in the process of putting up letterboxes. There was no mailboxes previously, so we're putting up mailboxes with numbers on them, which will help identify, plus also help us share information easier than what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah. In terms of, I guess, telecommunication to Nanima, I mean, I'd imagine, are there many landlines out there? I'd imagine probably not, eh?
That is an issue. Even there are a couple of landlines. There's no public phone box. There used to be, but there's not anymore. And service for mobiles is limited as well. There's only a couple of spots where you can get that. And like I said, even if we did want to so-called lock people down, how do you get supplies to them? Even myself as a CEO, I can't go in and bulk buy in the local supermarket and deliver things. And they've stopped online ordering here in Wellington, which is really weird. Don't know why they've done that, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. One of the other issues that we have here is we only have one taxi service, and actually one physical taxi and 2 drivers. And although they're still going at the moment, they've limited their hours, and certainly some of our community rely on that taxi service to get to and from not only the doctors, but also to the supermarket. So hopefully will keep operating a little bit longer.
I guess right now, because there is so much uncertainty, so much is up in the air, staying safe has clearly got to be the priority. What is it that you need? What do you want? I know we've talked about this over the last 15 minutes or so, to make that path a little bit easier for you and your community.
At the moment, I think we're certainly getting enough information. We're trying to identify families at the moment and individuals and elders that may need extra assistance. But I do see transport as being something we need to keep an eye on. And just getting hold of those basic supplies is obviously the biggest concern at the moment. And I think people have got a little bit now, but if we do go into a lockdown situation, I don't know how long that's going to last. Yeah, I don't know. We just have to see where things are heading, Michelle, and everything's sort of uncertain at the moment. And like I said, we're just making contact and keeping communication lines open with all the service providers in the town, and trying as much as we can to work together. So,
I guess to finish off, though, I've spoken with a few CEOs from LALCs this week. One actually this morning who was, I could say sort of distressed. He was so overwhelmed by what needs to be done and working by himself. So how are you holding up?
Yeah, look, I'm good. And unfortunately, I've had to put off 2 casual staff. So my 2IC, so to speak, she's helping me as well. And we're still on top of, we've still got 30 odd homes to manage, and there are still issues around getting tradesmen and keeping up that day-to-day stuff. But look, we're holding up. I do feel a little bit like, what more can I do? And every day I'm thinking about how I can improve the service to our members in the current environment, and our heads are up and we're battling on.
You can do Nayania Baraya, Nayania Manania, Manania, Manania.